there we go. So we're going to go live now onto the correct channel. Another guest I had on is in Portugal, and he's been loving it too. So I've heard really good things.
Hmm.
So even like Canada's been bad. Just getting a few months of like sun and freedom would be pretty phenomenal. All right, we're on the right channel. Now let me hit the recording, and here we go. Hello and welcome to the Mastermind Body and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matthew Belair. As you know, we've been facing extreme censorship alongside many other truth seekers out there. So if you want to support this show, please go over to mattbelair.com and you can become a member. You can support by sharing episodes and leaving a review. But the most important thing you can do to support the show is to consider doing 3 kind acts wherever you are in the world today. Today's guest is a startup founder, author, and apprentice of Medicine Ways. He taught himself programming at the age of 8 and became at 17 the youngest ever Bitcoin entrepreneur to be accepted into the renowned Silicon Valley startup accelerator Boost VC. Soon after, and although raised atheist, dreams led him to the medicine path. For 3 years, he removed himself from all social media or public life and dove deep into initiatory ceremonial work with various sacred earth-based lineages, participating and serving in multiple ceremonies per week. He just published The Information Spell, a book in which he advocates for the reconnection of ancestral wisdom and technological progress. Welcome to the show, Louison Dumont.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be here.
I try my best to pronounce it with the French on there. How do you pronounce your name? It's so much better. It's so nice. We were talking about this before.
Louison Dumont. But you did
See
it
that?
well. Good
Oh,
job.
thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I was saying I'm the weaker version because I'm the French Canadian. Not as in depth as the Quebecers, but I spent some time in France and really enjoyed it. So I'm excited to have you on the show. As I was kind of mentioning before, I'm kind of feeling crappy. So I'm going to let you run with this and talk about your expertise. But I really wanted to make this show happen because I think what you're sharing and what you're talking about in your book and your path is very important at these times that we're in. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about your background because, going from kind of genius programmer to the medicine path, they're 2 different worlds. And I'm just really curious how you're synergizing those and getting them to work cooperatively in these times.
Yeah, thank you. Great questions. Yeah, so my life right now, the way it looks is nothing like what I could expect when I was a kid. I grew up, as you said, as an atheist. My parents were not religious. We sometimes went to church, but really nobody believed in anything. And I was just very scientifically minded. And thought that my dream in life was to just become a successful tech entrepreneur and just, I had no spiritual background at all. And I even thought that spiritual people were kind of stupid. I had a judgment about them. I thought, I thought that religions were for people who don't want to face reality, just looking for a coping strategy. And yeah, it just kind of happened to me. I flew to San Francisco from France when I was 17, right after high school, to follow my dreams. And I got in the startup world. I started meeting more and more people. And I just realized that I still felt super empty. That even though I was living the life that I dreamed of, I was in Silicon Valley. I was surrounded by people who I found inspiring my whole life. I still was feeling empty and unfulfilled. So to be honest, that was a really, really difficult time in my life. I just cried so many times. Just I remember crying because I was just on the other side of the world on my own with just no idea what I was doing. And all those moments really pushed me to seek something deeper. So I got into meditation. I got into some spiritual practices without wanting to admit to myself that it was spiritual. And I was like, no, that's not for me. I'm just going to take what seems reasonable to my mind and apply that. And the more I did that, the more things that were completely outside of the scope of my reality started happening. I started having dreams of beings visiting me and telling me, like, go do that, go like look online for shamanic communities, do those things. So I started doing that. And after months and months of just doing the practices, I started waking up. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, you can. Well, you can feel free to dive as deep as you like, but I like that background. And as I was checking out your work, you're kind of building the website, and I was trying to find because you were offline, so I was trying to
Mhm.
kind of check you out. And then I started to look at the chapters of the book, and I'm realizing how powerful they are. You know what I mean? Like you talk about right in one of your first chapters, the internet as a mirror for our spiritual union. And so your interpretation of the technological world and moving in that, and then finding the spiritual world, and to bridge those things, I think is really powerful, because I think it's not about throwing out everything in the technological world, not throwing everything out in our governmental systems and all these, well, maybe the government, but a lot of these systems that we've grown with, it's just that they've gone a little bit too far. We've depended on them a little bit too much, and we've at an expense lost our connection with nature or spirituality, right? And so we need
Yeah,
to balance these forces out, or they start to use us. I think Prince said something like, use the computer but don't let the computer use you, or something like that. And even
yeah,
the other day I was just scrolling Instagram. I was like, why am I scrolling? Like I wasn't feeling so well, and just kept scrolling. I was like, and I just threw my phone. I was like, I'm not doing this.
right.
Like, this is just ridiculous. So yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about maybe making that leap, that decision from, okay, I'm going to leave Silicon Valley and I'm going to start to pursue this with a little bit more vigor?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in Silicon Valley, people talk a lot about making the world a better place. And what those awakenings made me see is that nobody knew what better meant. Like if you want to make the world better, you need to know what better means. What does it look like? And you need to understand the human condition to do that. So it's from those awakenings that it just became like super clear in my awareness that there was nothing more important for me to do than to seek my own awakening. um, so yeah, I started having dreams, very clear dreams that told me, to look for communities, to look for more practices, and that's what led me to the medicine path. I started doing medicine journeys with ayahuasca and peyote. Those really opened me up strongly. Started doing other practices like sweat lodges, vision quests. Yeah, I started finding, the different medicine paths and walking with them. And yeah, again, it felt like the most important, the most real thing in my life. Like I really felt called by this. There was nothing more real than this. So the leap was almost, it was survival, like it's like waking up to, okay, how bad do I want to be alive? And now that I'm alive, like I need to do what will make me be more alive and more awakened. So that's how I made the leap. And yeah, as far as how to bridge technology and spirituality in that regard, it was definitely challenging at first, because a lot of the communities that I started being around um, tended to be sometimes in the other extreme of Silicon Valley, of just really despising technology and feeling like technology was really a bad thing, something to be removed, or yeah, that technology was almost the source of all the issues in our world. And of course it's not. So for many years I felt almost like I no longer fit in Silicon Valley, and almost didn't fully fit either in the different spiritual communities in which I was, because of my involvement in both of those worlds, really.
Right. So when you were going on the medicine path,
Yeah.
and trying all these different things, at what point did you feel like that you wanted to write a book? Like, what are you trying to convey with this book? Do you feel like because even with the two worlds, when you talk about it, makes me think about the artificial intelligence or these screens. This is fake, right? You look on Instagram or Facebook, you put up your best photos and you curate this image and you have this avatar, and you're really connected to this world that's not even real. And I'm sure you've heard of the dead internet theory, which is a really interesting one, as well. And so then you move into nature, natural life, being present, plant medicine, understanding medicines, understanding the nature of, well, just nature in general. And I'm reminded of Carlos Barrios. Unfortunately, he's passed. He's one of the Mayan elder friends I had, and he did gathering of the elders from North and South America, and they had this one really special guy that they were really excited about, and he lived purely in the woods or the forest or wherever he had lived in South America. No technology, no nothing, purely off grid for years and years. And he had a shower in his house, and he goes, "Your water's dead." And he walked out and he went to a river nearby and he did a shower, and it just made me think about how more connected that person would be with the environment, with nature, with all of these nuances that I'm probably missing. Like I'm probably this big buffoon going through the forest connected to absolutely nothing, where this guy's hearing and really connected to the nuances. And so I feel like the technological world kind of brings us into that, and that's kind of what's been happening. We're getting sedated, and we're getting triggered with our dopamine and all the different things that are happening in our minds. But at the same time, we can share information now immediately. It can be used as a positive tool. And after this reflection, I'm curious how you would modify or change the internet and how this technology works and integrate it into the natural world, so we're using it in a more effective way, and we're not getting kind of trapped by all these mental habitual patterns that can happen, and also all the other things like not feeling good enough, comparing all these things are exacerbated in
Mhm.
that world, and TikTok and all the nonsense that's coming through there with the manipulation. So I'll just leave it at that and get your 2 cents.
Yeah. Yeah. So you ask, when is the moment that I knew I needed to write the book? And it's definitely in ceremony. It's definitely in those moments when I was deeply embedded in nature. If you, as you said, like the more you spend time in nature, the more nature speaks to you. And it's really the goal of most of the ceremonies I've been doing, and of things like vision quest. You go in nature and you sit there for 4 days. You don't drink, you don't sleep, you don't eat, and so you're forced to be present with yourself and with your surroundings. And in those moments, you realize, or at least I realized, that there are many stories in this world, and the human story is only one of the stories. When you stop engaging with the human story, which is the story we create through our speech, through all of our communications, you start listening, you start hearing the story of life itself, the story of nature, the story of reality surrounding you. That's much deeper, often that goes much deeper than the human story, which is just a construct. And so from that place, um, I started, feeling the deeper love, the deeper wisdom of life. But I also realized that the human story is tremendously powerful, and technology is tremendously influential. Today, if you want to impact the world, you need to know how to use technology, or you need to create technologies. The technology is, without any doubt, the most powerful um, agent of change in the world for me right now, or at least the one that I know. Of course, the people using the technology are the real change makers, but technology is changing everything. So if we want to change the world, we need to connect the deeper wisdom with the superficial technology. That's how I see it. So that's when I really got the message that my place as being involved both in spiritual communities and in the tech industry was to really bridge those worlds, because technology is transforming the world. That's not a question. But we need the wisdom of um, of just being a wiser person, of doing spiritual practices, of deepening ourselves as human beings, of learning what it means to be a human being. We need this wisdom to feed technological progress. So it's really important, and there's not enough people, I think, talking about this bridge. There's a lot of people who are deep into spirituality, who, I mean, amazing gurus out there who just help the world and explain spiritual awareness, help people find spiritual awareness in themselves and wake up. And then there are a lot of people who talk about technology and how it's changing the world, but don't connect the dots, don't connect the capacity for progress through technology and the spiritual awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And the first part of your book, you talk about the esoteric nature of the internet, internet
Mhm.
as a mirror for a spiritual union, the internet as a vehicle for a spiritual awakening. Can you elaborate on what you mean by those?
Yeah. Well, I think everything in physical reality is a reflection of spiritual reality. We seek in our physical incarnated reality what we already know or are in spiritual awareness. So if we're all one, and that's something that I believe, we're all one, we're the same being expressed as many, many faces, then we're seeking that communion in physical reality. And for me, the internet is only one of the ways in which we do that. We seek this communion from the moment we're born, and we try to reach out for our mother or father. We connect with each other in that way, and then we speak. And the internet is really just an extension of our language. So for me, it's really a technology that's helping us become more connected, of course, become more one. And we see it. We don't have to believe in spiritual ideas to see that. We see how, since the internet has been invented, people feel much more like they are a human on earth as opposed to French or Portuguese or American or Chinese. Like, our identity as a species, our identity as a humanity really has been emerging from her growing interconnectedness through the internet. So I really see it again as a reflection, as a mirror of what we already know deep inside. We are one, and we are reaching out for ourselves through those technologies.
That's a beautiful answer. And when you talk about a little bit further down in the book, becoming a digital survivalist, can you talk about that a little bit, and just your view on navigating the use of internet and social media and all these different things? Because I feel like my generation was the first one in high school. I got Facebook, right? And, the way that the internet and social media and these platforms evolve is incredible. So if you're, 5 years younger and 5 years younger than that and 5 years younger than that, it's almost these entirely different universes that are created for you. And as parents, it's hard to even navigate, what to do. My friend, I think he's done a good job. He came down, and I don't know what his son was watching, something messed up on YouTube. I can't remember what he said, but he's like, I found him watching something messed up on YouTube. So I just like totally didn't let him use it at all. So what's your recommendation for just how an adult or even a younger person would navigate using this tool? Because it's so easy to be lost into the kind of like the casino lottery mix that happens out there, right? It's all these little clips and these shiny things that get your attention. Then all of a sudden you're gone down a rabbit hole, and you're using it for nonsense. But on the other side, I've got a whole list of courses that I go through every year. I think last year I did probably 10 courses, and some of them were really big. And I really enjoy that. I get a lot of education, and have podcasts lined up. And so I can curate it in a way that it really becomes, powerful information. But even at that point, there can be too much information, right? As I'm scrolling too much Telegram, trying to figure out what's going on in the world. And I don't think that's healthy for most people. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I mean, just like any technology, the internet is not good or bad. It's just it's a technology, it's a tool. Of course, it's what you do with it. So, um, as you mentioned, it can be a really good thing. You say you learn for your courses online. You have access to all these podcasts, and I think it really comes down to also seeing how the whole like the human story itself is a great thing, can be a good thing, but with enough with moderation. You don't want to be involved in the human story all the time. You want to meditate, you want to sit back, you want to take some distance to be able to also hear the story of the universe, the story of nature itself. It's the point of doing some meditation, for example. So it's the same thing with the internet. It's a great technology, but if you are not aware of your use of the internet, you are entrapping yourself in the human story, and you can't get out of it, and it becomes a nightmare. It becomes filled with anxiety and stress. So that's what we're seeing with a lot of teenagers right now, for example. So I mean, there are many things you can do. I explain in my book. I mean, some of the very basic things you can do is be intentional. Every time you use your devices, think about why you're doing it. Like, don't just take your phone and without thinking. Like, just wait, breathe, and know why you're going to use your phone. And if you don't come up with a valid answer, if you don't know why you're going to do it, then don't. Just breathe, be with yourself. But if you do know what you're going to do it, but don't get distracted. Don't go do something else, because that's the issue. Most people start using their phones or their computer to do something useful, to do something productive, and then get carried away by a notification, an email, or something. So it takes practice, and I mean, I try to do it as much as possible, and I still fail. I still have times where I just go down the rabbit hole. So it's just like meditation. You focus on your breath and you come back to it. Like, you will fall, you will get distracted. It's a given. It's a given. It's all about not judging yourself and coming back to the practice and staying intentional. That's the main thing, I think. The second thing I would say is just like seek the root of the addiction. Like, it's an addiction. People who are scrolling social media all day, it's an addiction. And we don't talk about it enough because everybody is addicted. Most people are addicted. So it's kind of like smoking tobacco in the 60s. It is so widespread that nobody wants to talk about it. It's the shame prevents people from expressing it. And we're all like, well, everybody does it, so I don't need to talk about it. But so many people are just addicted. We need to say it like it is. It is addiction. And it is really just an extension of the addiction that we have with our own ego, with our own thinking. Again, the web is just an extension of human language. And we've been addicted to our ego, to our sense of identity and our talk inside our head for thousands of years already. So we now do that online. It's about being honest and seeing, why can I not be with myself and be still? Why do I need to go on the computer? Why can I not be at peace with just waiting in line at the store? Why do I need to grab my phone, And the answer is often because people are suffering, because people are in pain, and they don't want to be with their suffering. They don't want to be with their pain. So there's really no way to stop digital addiction and have a better use of the web if we're not willing to face our pain and our suffering. The good news is that it is tremendously powerful. If we can stop the cycle of addiction and just face ourselves, face our pain, then we can start growing again. Then we can start emerging from this pain and we can become a new person. So those are really the two main things I would tell anyone. It's basic, but it's tremendously powerful. Just being intentional and seeking the root of the addiction.
Yeah, well, when you shared an addiction, I was like, oh, it's like I knew that, but it was just more direct. I was like, oh shit, I'm addicted, which is right, because how David Lombear used to come on and say, how often do you take your phone to the toilet? You know what I mean? Why are you taking your phone to the toilet? And one of the practices he started to give at the end of our talks a couple of years ago was to just get off your phone from 10 to noon. You know what I mean? Just don't have it on you. And it's so funny because I remember seeing this clip, you can probably still find it online, where they interviewed people in New York in the 90s and said, if you could get a cell phone, would you want one? Everyone's like, no, I don't want a cell phone. I don't want people. And everyone was saying no, nobody wanted one. Right now it's like our own little kind of digital prison. And there's some things that I want to get into about going into a technological digital prison. What do they call it? The technological revolution or something like that. Klaus Schwab's book. But one thing I think is important is the idea of being bored, right? Just sitting with yourself, being bored and listening and just being with your thoughts. We're constantly looking for this distraction. So understanding that it's an addiction and then being okay with being bored. And another kind of tactical movement I've seen going on and haven't had the strength to do it yet is just getting to a flip phone. Like, you have your computer for your computer. It has everything that you need, but your phone just does phone stuff. It just calls and maybe even texts, and you leave it at that. And it's just like the practice of getting out into nature and doing these things. Once you can kind of cut it off and wean it off, you realize you didn't need it as much as you thought you did. And I feel like that's a very tactical thing to do, because it can be very hard to wean yourself off, as a strategy. It can be very challenging to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I've used the flip phone myself. It was really enlightening. I mean, think about it. Like, the world civilization as we know it has been here for thousands of years. And people built it without phones, without computers. So the idea that you can't survive without your phone, that you need even your phone or the computer or the internet to be more productive, more useful in society, is not true. In some industries, in some jobs, yes, you do, but most of the cases is just addiction. People lie to themselves, and I would even say in most of the time, people would actually be more productive if they didn't have their phones around. They would be more useful, more able to live a good life if they use them less. So you mentioned not using the phone in the morning, for example. That's also a great practice. Again, it depends on your job, on how you organize your life. But if you are working for yourself or working from home, and you have the opportunity to really control your exposure, your accessibility to the world, yeah, it's a great practice to leave those first few hours in the morning after you wake up just to be with yourself, or to be away from technology. It's pretty powerful, because you you know you either have an intent or the world gives you one. So that's the issue. Is people wake up and they check their phone, and the phone, then, from what they read on the news or social media, just starts putting things in their mind, and clouds their mind, clouds their judgment. And then they go on with their day, and they don't realize that they just wasted this amazing window of opportunity, which is the morning. Because when you wake up in the morning, your mind is usually much more clear. It's the clearest it will be in the whole day. Whereas if you don't check your phone when you wake up, you can really center yourself, think for yourself, cultivate sovereignty in your being, cultivate intentionality, and then approach your life, approach the day, approach the whole world with that intention.
Yeah, what you said there is very, very powerful. And it also, as you do that as a habit, which is, people wake up and they get into these habits, your phone, it'll cloud, but it also confuse and overwhelm. And that's kind of by design. You go from one to another, and then even whether it's just getting general information that could be useful about the day and the world events. And when the world events right now are all really kind of negative, and a lot of the people that I've been coaching and talking to lately, it's been very fascinating, because some places, not not a lot, unfortunately. I've experienced very little of this. My friends in the United States and Costa Rica and Mexico, they've experienced very little tyranny, where in Canada we've experienced an abundance of lockdowns and challenges and different things. And I feel on one side it's important to be aware of it, but people can easily be lost in this negative loop because there's so much of it. And how we
Mm.
mitigate that, so how do we respond to the situation that we are in and be the most useful? So understanding where there might be a danger or a challenge ahead, and to prepare for that, but then shut it off because you know what it is, and move most of your attention and energy into the response to what the challenge may be. And then the master teaching of all of this is, can you be whole and content and harmonious in the process? And I've had guests on my show that have been incarcerated and in jail, and they were able to get to these states where they were basically, they had no choice, and they were able to find peace in, almost 100% slavery. So I know it's possible, but it's really challenging when you're supposed to be apparently free and you can't participate in society, and you're going to lose your job and your livelihood and all this kind of stuff. And technology is either giving you hope or despair in which way this is going to kind of trend. So I'd be curious your thoughts on, how do we use technology for good? How do we bridge? You talk about this in your book a little bit, weaving antiquity into modern technology, and bringing spirituality into technology. I know right
Mhm.
now through Hollywood and media that it's being used for negative influence. They're implanting all these different ideas, and they're doing it on purpose, and it's not ideal. And if we could change that in the education system or our media, we could flip the world in a heartbeat. So that, I feel like, is included in the technology. And if we look at the plans from these people like Klaus Schwab, he talks about the fourth industrial revolution, and what they want to do is get us on these digital certificates with the digital banking and the digital crypto. So they want to basically enslave us through technology. This isn't my opinion. This is what they wrote in their books, which you can go pick up and read for yourself. And it's awful. And it eventually gets to a chip. So then our whole body's a QR code. There's the internet of things, but then there's the internet of bodies connected. And so now they're starting the propaganda with putting a chip in you, so that, you can be tracked and have all your medical information in there. So it sounds like I talked about this years ago and people couldn't believe it. And even now they can't, but they're starting to publish it on major newspapers. So how do we avoid that world and move into something where we can harmonize and synergize with technology in a positive way?
Yeah, great question. You touched some very, really powerful points. To answer that, I'm going to go back a bit to the beginning of your response. You said that, not sure exactly the words you used, but the idea that people consume the news and then they get stuck in those patterns and those loops of confusion and clouds, really does not lead people to action. It leads people to freezing. Like, I think we're in a time where there's so much information, people are actually freezing, and they're not actually taking action in their lives to really change their reality. So I think that the first step to answering your question is to really start inviting people to, instead of consuming the news of the world, what's happening in the world, to consume the news of their own reality, their own self, which is really how we gain sovereignty, on ourselves. We, instead of tuning into what's going on in the world, which is just an avoidance of ourselves, we start tuning into, okay, what is the weather, not in the world, but the weather inside me? How do I feel? What needs to be changed right now? What needs caring? What needs attention in me right now? So I think that's the most revolutionary thing that anyone in this world right now can do. And it requires no technology. It's something that people need to do for themselves. And only from this place can we start using technology in an empowered way. Only if we are ourselves empowering ourselves, we can use technology to do powerful things in the world. So it's about regaining that sovereignty first, taking the attention back to ourselves, in some way being selfish, just caring for ourselves, just taking care of this body first, of this person that we are first, and of our immediate circle first. And then from that place, then we can start using the web to bring more of what we need and what we want and what we're seeking, or express more of what needs to change, or organize the change around ourselves. But it needs to start with ourselves. We need to be grounded in ourselves, in what's really going on, to really use those technologies, those tools, for the right things. So let me try to give a concrete example. All those tools that we have, social media, etc., they're right now being used for a lot of confusion. But if people could develop more sovereignty in themselves and find more of the things that need to change in their immediate circle, they could use those same technologies that we are vilifying right now, like Facebook and all the social media, for good. They could actually use, and they are often, but not enough. We could use those technologies to organize positive change. But what it takes is people actually starting to listen to themselves and to what actually needs to happen, and taking action, not just listen to what the world is saying and then just retreat or repeat and say, oh yeah, this person is doing this person is doing that, but using those tools to actually create that change and foster that change. Does that answer your question, or do you want to dig a bit more?
Yeah, no, I love all that, and I totally agree. And I think what you said right at the beginning is so brilliant, is to monitor the inner world first. That's the most important thing. And the way that analogy that I've been using a lot, especially within my coaching, is like, okay, back in the day, if you think about Braveheart, where they had to go out with the arrows and the crazy maces, all these terrible ways you could die, and you could see, oh, the war is going to come. Well, how would you live leading up to that? And when you go into war, how settled would you be? And what would happen if you had to go into a battle like that? Is, number one, you would pray. You would have a spiritual connection. You would say, Creator God, please help me get through this, because this is so insane. You got people on horses with swords and bow and arrows. I have no idea if I'm going to get through this. And then that's a recognition that everybody needs to go through in their own life, to understand that you're mortal, that you're going to pass, that you're going to die. It's just, this is, really centralizing it, to say, hey, how at peace are you with your mortality, with your life? And then that can help you really redefine how you spend it. And so when you wake up each day and you say, okay, what's my inner world like? Then you can respond with greater purpose and, like you said, intent with what is happening, right? Because it will require a response. But when you first get centered, then you can respond rather than kind of get reactionary and be pulled, over and over. So I think that that's incredibly brilliant. And with the way that, they want to use this technology right now and where they're going, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about transhumanism. You talk about that a little bit in your book, and cryptocurrency. And this is where they've talked about putting it onto a digital currency. So that way, if you had a QR code and they say, oh, we're going to have lockdowns, apologies for my voice.
No problem.
Give me one sec. if they have lockdowns, right, and they say, oh, well, you can't use it for 15 miles because you're in a lockdown, well, your QR code wouldn't work. But then eventually it's actually going to be a chip. And they talk about this. And that's why with the increased drones and the 5Gs and the whole technology, it becomes pretty frightening. And there is a transhumanism agenda, this, gender neutral, really weird stuff going on. And, and it removes the soul. And if you look into some of their old work and you look at the work of Rudolf Steiner and all these different things, their whole agenda from the beginning was to remove spirit from man. They sometimes say they remove the ghost in the machine. And that's why if you do plant medicine or you do something like that, you recognize that there is a more powerful force, something that is unifying, that is beyond words, that is unbelievable. And all the plants, all the animals, the rest of the earth knows this. And humans seem to be, it's this great distraction. It is the matrix to take you away from that, to think that you're not connected to this incredibly powerful, brilliant, unbelievable magical force. And one thing I've been liking is every now and then some of the people that I follow will talk about how the controllers want to create AI and bots and technology, and then it'll compare it to nature, like God's creation. And you look at, what's that super fast bird? I don't know why. Gee, the fast little tiny bird that can fly backwards and forwards, and a hummingbird.
Hummingbird, yeah.
Yeah, and just like the color and what God has created is so magical, and we have that ability within us. We have the spirit. That's the one thing that they're not accounting for, is the spirit of man. And even to go a little bit further, there's an old interview in Time magazine with Bill Gates, and somebody makes a joke and says, yeah, it's like a soul of man. And he gets all weird and he does his like back and forth thing. He says, we don't have evidence for that. We don't have evidence for that. And these kind of evil kind of controllers who want to take the spirit out, they don't believe in this. They actually believe in something else. And that's why they're able to stick in this material realm. But when you get connected to nature, you realize it's all spiritual. It's all connected. It's all magical and beautiful and beyond words. And there's something giving this and granting it, and you choose with your own free will to connect with that. And I feel like the more disconnected we get with that, the more we have no meaning, we have no purpose, we get lost. And then that's when they can insert their agenda and and give us purpose and give us meaning and give us intent and use us for whatever they wish.
Yeah, you nailed it. A lot of people in the tech industry are extremely rational. And when I say extremely rational, I mean it literally, like extremely. Like being rational is not a bad thing, but when you're extremely rational, just like any extremes, it becomes problematic. It's an industry where if you want to succeed, if you walk in it, usually you are a very intellectual, analytical person. And so a lot of people in this industry, I would not say are evil. I don't believe they are like choosing to harm people, but they are ignorant. There is ignorance. There's a lot of ignorance. And so really transhumanism is just the religion of mainstream science, if you think about it, because what transhumanism seeks is transcendence through technological improvement. And this mainstream science is materialist. It does not make any room for spirit, for God. It's not, as you said, as you used the example of Bill Gates, I believe you said in an interview, just being like, no, the soul does not exist. The soul has not been proven. And it's true. It hasn't been proven scientifically. It is to be experienced by consciousness itself. So it's a matter of awakening that cannot be communicated through absolute logical terms. It has to be experienced. And so what I see going on in Silicon Valley is a lot of people who don't believe in God, don't believe in spirit, don't have spiritual practices, just like me when I was a kid, think that religious people are stupid, are deluding themselves. And from that place, they feel above, they feel superior to those concepts, and they even feel like they are the ones leading evolution, because technology has been transforming the world in so many ways, and there has been so much money being thrown at technological companies, and those companies have been generating themselves so much money. It's easy for people in this industry to feel like they are the kings, the new kings, like they are the ones leading the evolution of mankind. That's really how a lot of people feel in this industry. So you take those two components, the lack of understanding of spirit, the really like flat materialist perspective of reality, and you add to it ego, you add to it just feeling of superiority, feeling like they're really the chosen ones that are changing the world, and you create transhumanism, which is this idea that they are going to help humanity ascend to a whole new way of existing through putting chips in your brain and uploading your consciousness to the cloud and all those things, when of course they don't even understand what consciousness is in the first place. They don't understand. They're trying to affect something that they don't understand. Or there's also a lot of talks about killing death. Some people in Silicon Valley believe that using technology we're going to be able to alter our biology using nanorobots and gene editing and all those things to essentially be immortal. And they see it as a good thing. Of course, if you have spiritual beliefs, you can see all the reasons why this is not a good thing, because we need the cycle of life. We need to transition somewhere else. If we just stay here forever, we're really removing a lot to what we're doing here. We're creating a living hell. So I would not say any of those people are evil. They're just really ignorant. They just haven't touched a deeper spiritual understanding because they're really stuck in their heads. They're not letting themselves go in the body and go in the innocence of natural curiosity and just like experiencing life as it is. And I understand it because I've been there, and a lot of people have been there. It's really, and I'm still there now, and it's a difficult thing to. It can seem like a difficult thing to stop thinking and to actually experience. So let's see if there's anywhere else I want to bring this. Yeah, you see people like Elon Musk talking about this reality potentially being a simulation. It really tells you a lot about his ignorance. I have a lot of respect for his work. Really, really great man on so many levels. But here you have, on paper, the richest person in the world, one of the most influential person in the world, and the man clearly lacks some understanding, clearly lacks some wisdom here. So those are the people leading our world. Those are the people leading the mainstream perception of where we're going and where we need to go, and they don't have spiritual connection. They spread ideas like reality being a simulation, and potentially, I mean, they're basically saying that humans are almost like machines, that we are like machines, and that machines can are going to be more intelligent than us, more advanced than us. Of course, all those things, when we have a spiritual understanding, are not possible because machines don't have a soul. We are the soul, we are the consciousness, and we're creating the machines. So it's really, yeah, in my book I really try to bring more of a holistic perspective to transhumanism and explain that technology is, yeah, a tremendous force for our evolution. It is true, it is really transforming the world, but we need balance. We need to execute that transformation while remembering spirit, so we don't turn into some really scary people, with chips in our brains, and we don't lose our humanity. Really, we don't narrow the human experience to a robotic state.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of great points, and I feel like if we're going to go down this path of technology, then it's aligning it with the Creator's laws or universal laws or God's laws. Not to interfere and play God. And I was going through the Book of Enoch and had a couple podcasts that I was going through, and one of the ideas was that God struck down the earth, and one of his main laws was don't mess with creation. Don't, every time we mess with genetics, that's when it talked about God wiping out the earth. And I thought that was a very interesting analogy. And that's kind of, some people out there talk about, them trying to play God. And I think that we differ in the sense that I do think some of these people are evil because of their intent to control and harm and manipulate reality, but most people are order followers. So the doctors and nurses and all these people, a lot of them, like I know a lot of them, and they're not speaking out. They know what's going on. Some of them are buying the Kool-Aid for what's going on because that was their indoctrination and that was their education. But some of them, they'll lose their job. They can't provide for their family. Can't do. They're good people, but they're doing this anyway, or they bought it hook, line, and sinker, and they think what they're doing is good when it's not good. It's actually terrible. So they're just following the orders. But who created those orders and what was their intent? And from my research and understanding, these people do not have positive intent. So whether they're defined as evil is one thing, but they're definitely a threat. And what they have designed for the rest of us is not good. It's not life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is not a connection with the creator. It is not harmony, cooperation, and peace. It's the total opposite. And they're using all of their force and their influence and intent to architect that reality. And so I feel like it's important to just understand it and call it what it is. But then say, okay, well, now that we know that, how do we design something better? And I'd love for you to touch on that. How do we begin using these technologies? Because we're even seeing it now. Like you look at YouTube had to take off the dislikes because all of these nonsense posts, people are waking up and putting thousands of dislikes, and you start seeing these comments go. And now we're seeing, oh, it's not what they're saying. They're controlling as much as they can, but you're seeing that people are communicating that they're not buying, like something is off. And so they can only control it so much. So we have this opportunity to do something great, to share information at a blink of an eye. And there's a lot of other great things, but what they want to use it for is probably not positive. And I don't know if you want to touch a little bit. You were into crypto with the Bitcoin and stuff like that, and I know what they want to do with that. Right, their whole. I've heard of multiple financial experts just talk about it, where this old system where it used to be backed by gold, it's not. So we're already in a fake money system. There's no value there. We just agree there's value. They're holding up this old system with inflation, going to central banks, International Monetary Fund, things like that. That can crash. And then they say, hey, here's a new digital one that is now definitely meaningless. And so if you don't obey to what we like, we just shut that off. And now you can't go get groceries. And that's a pretty frightening future. And I'd be curious your thoughts on just how do we use this technology for good? How do we start to integrate the spirit and use these systems and prevent that kind of scenario they want to architect? And your thoughts on cryptocurrency?
Well, I think crypto is the answer, actually. That's crypto is basically allowing us to build a new internet that is based on people owning their data and not being just not for it to not be able to censor anyone on the internet. That comes with its own set of issues, but total freedom of expression is possible with crypto, which is not possible on the internet as we know it right now with centralized social media, as you explained with YouTube, removing comments and removing dislikes and all that. So, I mean, you are right. I mean, I use the word evil carefully, but I agree with you that a lot of people in this industry have, I would say they have this belief that they deserve to have more power because they know how to use it better than other people. And so that's the justification behind a lot of companies like Google or Facebook taking all this data. It's, oh, but we're not going to do anything bad. We want to make the world a better place. We're actually going to use it for good, but we need that power first to do things. And of course, we see that we can't trust them. We can't trust them with all that power because they censor people, they mute people who have different opinions. So what crypto allows is for us to rebuild a completely new internet that is not owned by anyone really, or owned by everybody, such that there will still be private companies building interfaces, building softwares, because you need for-profit companies to have an incentive to create technologies. Open source is a beautiful ideal, but the reality is money is what puts food on the table, and there's an amazing incentive for companies to build technologies and make a lot of money, and thus have an incentive to create very user-friendly experiences for people. But what crypto allows is that you can experience those interfaces with those private companies while still remaining in full ownership of your data, and thus change to any other interface in the future if you need. So, for example, if a crypto YouTube decided to ban what you talk about online, your data would still be there and anyone could still access it with a different software. You would not have to jump to a different platform. Your data would still be there. So for me, that's really what we're seeing happening is the internet, the web becoming more mature, more sovereign through crypto, through blockchain, through this, those technologies that allow it to be more established in the world as a resource for humanity as opposed to a product created by private companies. Now, you also said it's true that the shadow of that is that some people want to control crypto, want to control those technologies to control people even more. I mean, it's crazy. You can come up with the most liberating technology ever, and there will always be someone trying to control it, trying to turn it to their advantage. And it's like that with everything. Everything in life. COVID appeared. You could say they made it or they didn't make it. Whatever it is, like whatever happens in the world, there are always going to be people trying to take advantage of it. But crypto, really, Bitcoin was created for me just out of pure generosity. The guy who created it is anonymous. He never spent his Bitcoin. I don't remember the number, but he's supposed to have billions and billions of dollars in Bitcoin. He never used them. So it seems like it really came from the heart, from just someone being interested in being like, okay, let's put this thing online. And I do think that it's a truly liberating technology for what it allows people to do online. You can buy anything you want online. Now you can, as I said, create a new internet. But really, there's no way anyone can control it. So I hear your concerns about governments trying to use it against people, but really the technology itself cannot be controlled. So as long as people know how to use the technology, I just think it's a wonderful thing.
Well, I appreciate those insights because I do have, even in this community, I think it's split. Some people are like, okay, crypto is good. Some people are like, oh no, it's no good. But and I don't have the expertise to understand like the blockchain. That's what they're talking about, the blockchain.
Yeah.
But couldn't they just make it illegal to say, all right, if you're trading in,
Yeah.
They do a policy. It's like, okay, you have all this Bitcoin, but you're only going to use the government coin. So if you use anything else, then it's illegal. Couldn't they do something like that?
Yes and no. So I mean, yeah, there has been a lot of bullshit going on around the crypto and blockchain space recently. Just like it's kind of like the dot-com bubble. There's actually value to the web. It's let's not just throw everything away and say, okay, crypto is bullshit. But I would say 95% of what's out there right now is bullshit. So there are people trying to make a quick buck of unsuspecting people, creating shit coins, creating the stupid coins that people just pump and dump. All this stuff is real and definitely not good. But really, the core of it is really strong. So you ask, can a government ban it? Yes, they can, but all it would take for someone to keep using it is use a VPN or use Tor. I don't know if you've heard of Tor. It's a software to access the dark web. So in China, you can actually see in China, they just banned it. Like a couple months ago, they said, okay, all Chinese people, you are no longer allowed to mine Bitcoin. You are no longer allowed to buy, to trade, to do anything with Bitcoin. Now, the reality is a lot of people, just closed their trading accounts and stopped. But a lot of other people are just keep using it. All they do is use a VPN. And there's nothing the Chinese government can do to prevent that, because the internet, they would either have to ban the whole internet, or they just can't do it. They can't ban all VPNs, or even if they do, there will be new VPNs that will fly under the radar. So there's no effective way to ban crypto. You could ban the trading exchanges. You could ban the ways in which people convert their crypto into fiat currencies. But there will always be ways in which people can, convert their crypto to cash in person on the street, for example. There is websites where you can actually meet people on the streets and convert your Bitcoin like that. Or you could still buy things online, buy services online in crypto, and nobody would ever know about it. So yes, they can make it harder for people to use it, but ultimately it's here to stay. And that's for the means of exchange. So that's for the crypto as a currency. But you also have blockchains that can help you create software that can create new digital experiences. Those, I don't see why they would actually ban this, because it's it's actually already being used in some ways. Like when you use WhatsApp, for example, your messages are already encrypted. You could say, well, the NSA doesn't like this because they can't see your messages. But really, there's nothing they can do about it. If they start telling Facebook, no, 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 stop encrypting the messages, it's just not gonna fly. Yes, they like to spy on people, but some things are already established, and there are already frontiers on people's liberties that we already have established. So I'm feeling pretty hopeful with that.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm definitely a noob when it comes to the crypto, and I know that the whole blockchain technology is really the exciting piece, and it's also the idea of trading. Another way to trade without banking and currency. And we know that banking, if you study the world and how things have happened, it's this centralized banking that's really an issue, because if they can control the currency, they can start to manipulate a lot of other things like the markets, like the politics, and all these different things. And we need to really reimagine everything from the ground up and make sure that every single system that we're using, that we're engaging with, is kind of like spiritually, morally, and ethically aligned. And so to stop participating in those things that are not align with those ideas, and start to recreate things built on spiritual principles so that it makes sense. You know what I mean? And so this is just a big opportunity, I think, for mankind to take everything that we have done and then say, oh, we got to stop because it's kind of gotten out of control, and now let's redefine and reuse these things, and make sure that they're pointed in the right direction. And even if let's say these rulers or creators or these people with intent that don't have the greater good in mind, we just stop participating in that and participate in something else. That's all we need to do, is remove our participation from things that are not helpful. That's all we have to do. And work and cooperate in the communities that we're in. And that's how we're going to find these solutions. And this is what this opportunity is for me. So I just appreciate you and your work and your book and what you're talking about, and synergizing those two worlds. Is there any other topics or any questions that you wish I'd asked that you want to cover before we close this out?
Mm, I'm curious, do you have any?
I think I just always throw the big general ones at you. You know what I mean? Like how do you see us moving forward?
Yeah,
Like the way that I see it is, they've got the agenda with the technology, and it's
yeah.
written down. I'm not making it up. It's in their books, and it's not positive. And
Hmm.
then but they don't count for the spiritual aspect. They don't count
Yeah,
for the 100th monkey or whatever. Ideally we're a little bit more divine and smarter than monkeys, but I feel like the hand of God or the creator, to go against the creator, I think is really stupid. Or to go against nature, right? Nature is
yeah.
always going to win. God is always going to win, in my view. And I think the whole point is to sell your soul. You know what I mean? To compromise who you are, to make these choices that are harmful to others. Or like you said, you've got the human story, but what about all the other things, like in the native teachings, they talk about all my relations,
Right,
even the rocks, the trees, the birds, everything is life. And how do we integrate into that, and
right.
and not compromise that for this fake paper, this fake thing, or whatever the manipulation may be.
Yeah, I mean, I think you summed it all when you said that we really choose with our habits, with the way we consume, the way we live. So, I talked about WhatsApp, for example, having encrypted messaging. That actually didn't happen until Facebook started realizing that people were moving away from WhatsApp towards encrypted apps because they were caring for their privacy. So it really shows how,
Oh, you
key
froze.
for us moving forward.
Oh, can you
Can you?
repeat that? You froze for about 10 seconds. You're back now.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's
Yeah, I
okay.
was. It seems like yeah, my connection is not so good. I'm sorry for that. So yeah, I was saying, you touched on the point of people voting with their choices, basically, and I talked about WhatsApp encrypting messages, and you can see how really the way it happened is Facebook had to start encrypting messages on WhatsApp because people were moving away from WhatsApp to Signal and other apps where their messages were fully private. So for people choosing privacy, for people choosing to use technology differently, those companies had to change to fit those new demands from consumers. So that's really what I see as being the way to move forward. We need people to start. If people want to see more wisdom in technology, they need to start demanding that for themselves in their own lives. that is connecting spiritually to themselves, that is tuning in into, as we shared earlier, the weather of their own self, the news of their own being, cultivating that sovereignty, and then seeing that automatically reflect in the world in which they live through the way they now exist in this world. So yeah, I think there's a lot of amazing potential for how technology can become more spiritual, more wise, for how interfaces can become less intrusive. And that really is going to happen with people demanding it, starting to be like, hey, I'm not gonna use Facebook if you have all those um, design techniques in it that make it so that I'm addicted to it. And so all those things are going to keep forcing the industry to find new ways to be helpful in people's lives, and not actually try to enslave them to technology. But it starts collectively. It starts with people really taking ownership of their own lives, and not letting those technologies abuse them, so that we can really redefine the place of technology in our lives. And there are beautiful things that we can do. I mean, the computer revolution is huge. It is, in my kind of like prophetic belief, like my own version of transhumanism is that software.
Oh, shoot. Oh, shoot. Yeah, you're just about to say your prophetic.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Your belief is
My
what?
prophetic revelation.
Yeah,
See,
right.
the
And then
world
it stops.
hear
Like, shit. It's too powerful. The internet shut it down. It's already self-aware. Shit.
So yeah, the revelation is that really software is so powerful that I can see how it can move us to a post um, a world beyond necessity. That's the name of our the last chapter in my book, a world beyond necessity, which means there is everything could be automated, really. Everything, a lot of the way we live today, a lot of the ways we produce value today could actually be automated. That can seem like a scary thing, like can seem like a Black Mirror thing, but I actually do think if we do it properly, we can actually raise the standard of living for billions of people. We can actually increase the standard of living so much that people can start seeking higher ideals. People don't have to be a slave to money anymore. But there's two scenarios here. We either let those big corporations without soul take all this productivity, just develop all the AIs, develop all the softwares that are going to automate more and more of the world and capture all this value. And we're going to have companies with tens of trillions of dollars of valuation and people with nothing. Or we find a way to actually reclaim our sovereignty, push the industry towards more ownership for people, and we find ways also with the legal system to actually create a system where everybody can receive a part of that value. And that's that's a completely new conversation to have, but I feel really hopeful that if we can do this properly, if we wake up and we don't let the agenda of these companies just owning the whole world happen, we can actually have a world with much more prosperity. But it really takes people waking up to their own selves, their own sovereignty, and really looking at what's going on in their own lives and demanding um, health. Really, that's what it comes down to in the end. It's just health, demanding healthy relationships, healthy interactions with companies, with technologies, and it starts with us.
I love it. I totally agree. If you want to change the world, change yourself. And it seems like we want to push the button and make everything okay. You're totally correct. The best thing that we can do is really just understand ourselves, know ourselves, and then that resonance will allow the opportunity for other people to learn and grow when they see that you can do it. And so I totally agree. I appreciate you coming on and your work. If people want to check out the book or your website or follow you, where should they go?
They can go on my website, louison.me, so louison.me. And yeah, that's my website. So you're going to find a link to my book and other things.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate you. We'll definitely
Thank
stay in
you.
touch and see how things go, and definitely hope for the best. I love, with the technology and what we can access, the sky's the limit. So if we can do that in conjunction with God's law, universal law, and, taking into relation all things, the sky's the limit. So we just have to vote with our choice and our consciousness. So appreciate you. And thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
All right. See you guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.